Hey, what's up? Good evening. Happy Monday. We getting ready to start this week off right. We're in the holiday season, and uh, I call this the Lion Month because This is the month that everybody lied to themselves about what they're gonna do next next year. So, so we ain't gonna tell no lies on here. But anyway, I'm Dr. Terry Polite. Sitting in for our host Rod Love. He was kind of busy today and he had some things to do. So he called me and said, "Hey, I need you to sit over there in the big chair and stuff." And we got a very interesting show for you this evening. I have with me Miss Shaquita Wynn, who is the program director for FEC, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Florida Economic Consortium, and
Yes.
she leads many of the programs for that concern in the Central Florida area. The after school is, I think, it's mentoring and things like that, and after school and all of these great things to empower our community. And so we welcome her to sit in as a co-host. She just disappeared, but I'm sure she'll be back. Y'all got to get that high-speed internet, I tell you. But we got a special gift. And you know what? I am fast becoming a huge fan of this young lady because she is so awesome. She was on one of our other shows on the network last week, and when I say she brought the noise, she bought it. So we were very entertained, and whenever we get guests and we find ourselves talking about that guest 2 and 3 days after their appearance, we know that they are a powerhouse. So I want to introduce to the Sit Down Nation our special guest, Attorney Lisa Knox. Good evening, Ms. Knox. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Good evening. How are you all? I'm so happy to be here.
Okay. Now, see, I don't have on the hat today. I have to put on this little monkey suit. So.
Well, you look sharp.
You look good.
Sharp.
You look good.
But anyway, and I'm trying to grow my beard in too. So
Me
y'all,
too.
Excuse you trying to grow?
What?
I hear you. So, last week on the sit down, we brought this show and we brought some information about domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
And this week we're going to kind of tie that together in that we're going to discuss family mediation dynamics and that type of stuff that can stop you from getting to the level of domestic violence. Absolutely. You know, a lot of things that that we have to understand is that many people who are in domestic violence on both sides tend to not be able to manage their lives in many ways or make good choices. So sometimes they need somebody that can step in and provide a framework or an outline as how to manage the issues, how to manage those issues in a constructive and healthy way. And that's what mediation is about. Part of the mediation is about helping them say, hey, look at this. We're going to, okay, you can do it yourself. So we're going to step in. We're going to find out what it is you want and that kind of thing. So Ms. Knox, tell us, how did you get started in mediation, family mediation?
Well, of course, I did the training that's necessary. So there's a training class, I believe it's 40 hours. And then there's where you also have to spend quite a bit of time getting what's called mentorship, where you watch mediations, you participate in mediations as a trainee and so forth until you're able to get out on your own. Really, to be very honest with you, you know, it's a common thing where people say, oh, I want to be a mediator. I want to be a mediator. It's a specific gift and a specific commitment to being a mediator. And so I say all the time, I'm still learning. You know, I've been doing this for years. I'm still learning. I'm still seeing new things. I'm still learning from other mediators. So, but yeah.
Okay. Did you have a particular personal incident that led you to that?
I did. I absolutely did. I don't know know if I told you this already. So for those who are listening, I have the benefit, or I guess displeasure, of actually having been in the seat of many of the people who come to me. So I have been in a divorce, and the divorce was not a pretty sight. It was not, it wasn't like we had a whole bunch of property. We were poor, but we had our son, and so we, we sort of had that, and then there was emotions, and so I am also an attorney in addition to being a Florida certified family law mediator. But I focus more so on, I always tell people I'm a family law attorney. I'm not a divorce attorney. And I say that because I have been in that seat and I know what it feels like to misuse your power. So I like to do a lot of mediation and other alternative dispute resolution kind of things that keep us out of court, keep us having to do hardcore litigation and fighting against each other, because I was that person who was like, oh, I'm going to be slick. I'm going to be slick. You know? So if I can tell my story and y'all don't judge me because I've learned from then, right? But when I was facing a divorce, my son was a little guy. He was like 1. And then of course I assumed, he's 1. He needs mommy. He needs mommy more than he needs daddy. Like, what's that saying? Mommy's baby, daddy's maybe, which is so unfair, right? Yes. So I was like, oh, he needs me. So knowing my ex-husband, and if he's ever listening, I think I've apologized 1,000 times, but you're going to hear me apologize again. It was a game changer for me because knowing my ex-husband, I knew that his pride was big. So I went to his pride. I appeased his pride in manipulation. Y'all got to be careful. Sometimes we're manipulating, we don't know we're doing it. And then sometimes we're manipulating and we think we're doing it for the better good. You're not. So I used his manipulation and I said, hey, you don't want these people telling us what we have to do? He said, no, I sure don't. I said, because who are they to tell you what you should do with your child? And he was like, that's right. I said, so let's just put down as the parties agree. And he was like, yep, that's what we'll do. So we go into mediation because every case is sent to mediation unless there's already an agreement. And we go into mediation and we stick to the plan and we put down as the parties agree. Well, when's dad going to get the child? As the parties agree. When's mom going to get the child? Well, mom has the primary, custody at that point. Right. So we'll just do as the parties agree for everything, holiday visits, all that kind of stuff. And guess what? That's what we did. And I did that. And he thought, great idea, just like a lot of people out here in the listening world thinks. But guess what? I knew in the back of my head, all I had to do was not agree. I had the power. All I had to do was not agree. And so, right.
So what was your motivation for doing that?
I was thinking that I was the better parent to make the decisions of what's going to happen, because I'd always been the one to take care of our child. I'd always been the one to figure out which daycare he was going to go to. And I'm the one who coordinates when his bath time is and when his bedtime was. And I'm mama. Because if don't nobody else know, I'm mama. I carried him in my womb for 9 months. That was my thought process.
Okay, so when you were in your mediation, did your feelings have something to do with?
Oh, absolutely.
So how do you keep your feelings out of this?
Well, see, I didn't know how to at that time. And let me tell you how it came to bite me. 5 years later, my son is 6 years old. Right? We've moved on with our life. And now dad is pretty much out of the picture because it was not as I agreed. So it's not going to be as I agreed. Right? And I'm not going to say I single-handedly kept him from our son. I didn't. But I know that him realizing, oh, she outsmarted me like that. That played a part in it. Right? And so here it is. 5 years later, my son is sitting on the bed in his room and he's absolutely demolished, in tears, inconsolable. And I asked him, son, what's going on? And I want mamas to hear me. If you're out here and you're thinking about doing what I did, hear me when I say, my son was brokenhearted. I asked him, what's going on? And he said, mommy, I don't have a daddy. So I don't have anyone who's going to teach me how to be a man. And so I'm afraid because I'm not going to know how to be a man when I grow up. I guess I'm gonna have to be, just not be a man.
I know that
That was
devastated you.
That was devastating. And see, Dr. Polite is like completely stunned. I knew I hadn't told you this part.
Because that is so. I'm sitting up there, and that hit me because I went through that same scenario with my son. My son is the youngest; he's my baby, and I can tell you. See, and speaking from the father's point of view, don't ever think that we are laying up there or we're doing so much in our life that our children are not on our heart and our mind, because they are. I tell you that it is, and I have told my kids, the most regretful part of my life was not being there in their teens like I wanted to. I never wanted to be divorced. I never wanted to not have my kids with me, but the relationship with their mom was so toxic and so harmful that it damaged everybody else. And I had to make the conscious choice, from my point of view, to be the adult in the equation.
And see,
that meant that keeping a distance from her, not to allow the toxic behavior to spill over and impact my kids' worth. Why? Because I grew up in that environment. And there's nothing more disturbing than having to run out your house at 2 or 3 in the morning and go somewhere.
Right.
Okay. I never wanted that for my children. I was adamant about that. I would much rather, and like I've told my wife, I said, and my wife, she consoled me when we got married. She saw immediately what was going on and stuff, and she was like, just leave this thing in the hand of the Lord. You got to, you're being a good father. You meet your financial obligation and stuff to them. They're children right now, and just pray that God gives you an opportunity to reset those relationships with them. And that was always my prayer, and I've been able to do that since they've been adults. I don't deal with their mom, period. I have nothing to say to her. I will speak and say, hey, how you doing? That's it. Because the thing is that I know, and I've had this conversation with my kids, I never ran down their mom to them. And no matter what she said about me, I would not do it. But I have told them, since they're grown and now they're married and have children, I said, the relationship between your mother and I was our relationship. Never had anything to do with you.
Right. And
I hope you see that for your kids. Your relationship with your spouses has everything to do with you two. And it's not something you need to share with your kids.
Right.
So then, Doc, let me ask you a question then. So with the relationship that you had with your kid's mom and it affected you, did you ever think once, hey, maybe I need to go get some counseling for myself before getting to another relationship?
I have a counselor now. I go to mental health now.
So I find that so powerful, because going back, even to what I was telling you all, oftentimes it's hard for us to say, this is where I went wrong.
Yes.
This is where I went wrong. This is where I went wrong. A lot of times, and I am not a firm believer. Like I said before, I don't like to tear up families. I am not a divorce attorney per se. Right. And it is my pride that, even though I'm sure it's pretty bad for business, it is my pride that after speaking with me, several couples have found their way back to themselves and back to their marriage. And I'm happy about that, because I tell all my clients, don't come to me. It's like a gun. Don't come to me unless you're ready to pull the trigger, unless you've done any and everything, all things, because I love marriage. I love love. Right? But I would tell you, sometimes people, it takes a lot to have that. Let me look and see what I did, how I could.
Yes.
I was wrong. That is I was wrong when I manipulated the situation. Now, my ex-husband had his own battles that, maybe caused me to look at things differently, right? He had his own challenges and battles. I'm not going to say he was walking on water while I was out here, just, and I'm not going to say I was feeding, 5,000 with one loaf of bread, but, I can look back and say, that's where I made a big mistake. And so now every time I get to talk to a couple, every time I get to mediate, every time I get to look and say, okay, well, let's look at it from this position. Every time I have a client who says, well, just ask the parties agree. And I have to say, why? And now they're quiet because they don't know why. And they have to ask themselves why. I'm doing it because it's sort of like a go back in time machine, make it right.
Right. For what you went through, you don't want to pass that knowledge to the next person. So they have to give you a reason.
Not only that, I don't want to pass that to the next person. I don't want to encourage that, but also generational curses. I'm not.
Ooh, yes.
My role is not to create any more generational curses. I'm just breaking them.
I get triggered by that word. And I won't even get into it because it's a whole nother show. But listen, who do you find to be the most stubborn in these mediations, men or women?
Okay, so let me tell you. The truth doesn't matter. Y'all ready? Everybody hold your socks.
Okay.
You ready?
You ready?
Both of them.
Oh.
Both of them.
That's not the answer I was looking for.
I know that's not the answer I was looking for. I know that's not the answer.
So how do you deal with the fact that these people are so confrontational in these instances? Because I can tell you, when I went through what I went through, we never thought about, or we even talked to, or were told to go to mediation or anything.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and this was like it's been almost 25 years ago. So, the idea of mediation was never brought up by the court or anyone, or to help us find a balance. I mean, it was scorched earth.
Well, it's almost like going to therapy. That's something that is never discussed either.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And you know what? So here's the thing. So oftentimes, and it's really hard for me and a lot of mediators. So understand that every attorney is not a mediator. Okay. Every mediator is not a therapist. However, a lot of times those issues intersect. Okay. And what I mean is that I have to recognize, and I start out by laying ground rules and letting it be acknowledged in the beginning. One is voluntary. I'm not going to be able to make you, do anything. It's not court, right? So you all come to an agreement. It's voluntary, and it's an agreement of your choosing, right? So that one empowers people. So I let everyone know you're empowered, right? But two, let us be very clear. I let people know it's a family law case. So your emotions are going to play a part. And I'm a working mediator. So my job is to play devil's advocate and say why, and ask and challenge, especially when people get into their positions. They've talked to their friends and their family,
Yes.
To their friends, and their friends have said, no, what you need to do is get everything because, he was wrong. Or no, what you need to do, don't give her nothing. Don't you give her nothing. She's going to go and spend it on her nails. I hear all of it, all that people get upset because they talk to their friends and their family about what they did in 1972.
Well, isn't that old saying is you don't tell your friends what go on in your household?
Well, it's just a saying, and like a lot of things, people just be saying too much. They say that same thing and then tell everything. And look, and don't tell the story accurately. My daddy used to say, so now I'm a daddy's girl. So I'm a big champion of daddies who are trying to do right. Now, I'm not a big champion of any parent who's not trying to do right, but daddies who are trying to do right, I love because I'm a daddy's girl, right? And more so, I always say I'm a daddy's girl by choice because my dad chose me. Actually, he's not my biological father in that sense, but he helped me out as his child, and he's my daddy, right?
Right.
So I say that because my daddy always had a saying: you have to be careful when people tell their story, because only a fool would tell a story where he or she is not the superhero, right?
Right.
So you have to keep that in mind.
Look, she got my attention.
But you have to keep that in mind, because when you're talking to parties, especially who are getting divorced, nobody or very few people will come and say, I was the villain. You know, everybody's the superhero. If they have a villain story where they say, hey, I was the villain, it is in reaction to or in response to this was done wrong to me. You know? So acknowledging that this is the case. Now,
let me give you a tip from the therapist perspective on this.
Yes.
One of the things that I have learned to do with couples in conflict is ask them, why are you upset about what they did or they said? Because oftentimes I hear accusatory language. You made me do this, or you did this, and all of that. And a lot of it comes from what I call psychic thinking that the person knows how to read your mind.
Read mind, yeah.
How you feel about
how you feel.
Right. Yes. I don't like this.
Right.
Not being able to articulate why they don't like it. And once you start drilling down into that kind of stuff, you'll find that a lot of this stuff is built on false belief. It comes from what you were taught. And just because you were taught something doesn't mean it's correct.
Yeah. Well, it's not only about
you're responsible for your emotions. People, if people could get that's a golden ticket right there. When you learn to be responsible for your emotions, you stop being emotional about everything.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I had a friend tell me. I told him, we were courting, and I told him, I said, well, I don't like when you say this, this, and this, because, it makes me feel like this, this, and this. I thought I was, elevated. This makes me feel like this, this, and this. And that man looked me in the eye. He said, well, then those are your feelings to have. And let me tell you something. That furniture almost got moved.
He chopped your knees off, didn't he?
But you know what? That's the truth. You got to own that's your feelings. And it's not something, nobody else owes a debt to you to work around those. Or,
but
go
just
ahead.
because you feel it, but a lot make it true.
Right. But a lot of them don't express how they feel because they're going to think that person is going to leave, or they have to be in a relationship based on that other individual instead of having their own identity.
I agree with you
absolutely
in principle, but let me tell you something. A lot of people don't express their feelings because they don't understand their feelings.
Yes,
they don't know. They don't know why they're feeling the way that they do.
That is
don't underestimate the amount of people who, because Miss Wynn is talking. She is spitting facts up here, because don't underestimate the amount of people who will turn around and not share what they're thinking because they don't want it to be unsexy. They don't want it to kill the mood. What is it? The young people say we're vibing. We're vibing, right? Yes. So they don't want to stop the vibe or whatever. And I have told many a person, once again, I'm not a marriage therapist. I'm not a relation therapist. I'm over here learning from mistakes that I've made, right? But I tell people all the time, you need to be your worst self. And I don't mean, don't be your absolute worst self, but let people know who you are and what you're about. Stand on that. And the person who loves you, the person who's going to want to be with you, they're going to want to be with you, not despite, not in, not even though they're going to want to be with you as you are. Good, bad, and indifferent. Listen, my sweetie right now, who I love dearly, I let him know from the beginning, I don't cook but once a year. Thanksgiving, that's my time to shine. Any other time, if you're looking for somebody to give you a home cooked meal, it's not me.
Well, at least you was up front. You was up front. There's no expectation from that individual.
So when I tried to show out and I accidentally set a cast iron skillet on fire, guess what? Don't get upset. Don't get upset. Open the window.
Oh my God.
Get the fire extinguished.
Look, open the window and let's air it out. And the next day he brought me an air fryer, and that's how I knew he was the one.
So they knew they knew that he knew at that point that you weren't just throwing air in up in the air, that in fact you're not that one to cook.
That not until Thanksgiving, like a Super Saiyan. I save up my energy. So
listen, one of my friends told me one time, he said, I'm struggling with my wife because my wife sent her representative to meet me.
Yes.
And I said, what do you mean? He said, the way she acted when we were dating is not the way she acts now as a wife. And I'm frustrated by that.
Did he have a realistic expectation of what a wife is going to do then? That's the question now.
Well, okay, they were deep in the church, so church folks messy. They always kept trying to tell folks how to.
I didn't say that. Let me say this to your listening ear. Lisa Knox did not say that. Don't call me.
Shaquita
don't
say that either.
Dr. Polite said it. You can look me up on Facebook. Okay. Now, see, I'm not an attorney, but I am a therapist. Okay. So I hear these conversations and I see these movements and stuff. You would not believe how much power that the conflicts that you are seeing are powered by people who are not even in a relationship.
Oh, yes.
The outside. Me and my wife do a workshop called cheerleaders versus opponents.
Yes.
And we talk about the dynamic of being a cheerleader for each other rather than opponents to each other. And oftentimes the opponent side is filled with family members, friends, and all of those who have surrounded the appropriate person in a relationship, and they have a say or sway or influence on that person's behavior in that relationship. Right. Imagine you two get married, but it's 18 people in the marriage, 9 people on each side.
That's too many.
So
how can you manage? How can you manage and do that? So we teach you how to convert from that. And we teach you to have each other's back. Okay. So you're standing back to back. You're repelling your people. They're repelling their people. Say, no, don't get involved in my marriage. Right. Nope, you can't say that about my spouse. Right. No, we don't want your feedback on this.
Yep.
But people I'm sorry, go ahead, Doc.
And people don't do that because they don't know how to transition socially.
That's true.
They don't know how to transition socially once they become married. We got this thing about we got to still hang out with our buddies and our friends.
That's what I was going to say.
Let me tell you something. There's nothing wrong with having a close 1 or 2 friends, but if you got to go hang out with the whole gang, I guarantee your marriage ain't gonna be long term. Yeah, that is the stuff that fuels dissension and dissatisfaction with your marriage, because the comparison is the thief of all joy.
No, this is true.
And so we get out there in all of these circles and we're looking at what others have. Right. We become disheartened by our perception of our situation. Maybe we can't go on vacation all the time like Lisa and Boo thing every year. and we ain't got an RV like the Winds. You know, these are all my friends and they hang out, and every time I'm with them, they talk about traveling or they in Winnebago and they're doing this. I go home, and my husband is all he wants to do is hang out with family,
Mm-hmm.
but I want to travel the world.
Mm-hmm.
But see, you never know. Now, and here's the thing: you never know what it takes to get to that point,
Correct.
to
Correct.
that good that you think everyone's had. There's a journey within that.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Correct.
And you never know what sacrifices have been made. And it doesn't have to be that it's horrible, because that's the other thing too. People will compare themselves and then be like, well, he is probably beating on her. You know, she's probably, and they'll make like these horrible situations.
Yes,
it doesn't have to be that, but there is work. You don't know how many times that couple has had to say, you know what? I choose you still. I have hope still. You know, I have faith still.
I got another question. I'm going to veer us off of here.
We've been veering all night.
Hey, listen, how common is domestic violence in these situations as a factor? Or do you mediate for people who have experienced domestic violence?
Absolutely. You absolutely can. And I absolutely
Is it
have.
a common thing?
It is a regular thing. I'm not going to say, oh, it's common. It is a regular situation where there's domestic violence. So understand that now in this day and age, I do all of my mediations are, virtual through Zoom. Like we're all wearing, pajama bottoms and all, So that's the case. But that allows us to, keep things virtual. So now there's not that hands-on factor, but even before it was still a hands-on factor and in person. And it just means that as the mediator, my job is to make sure that I am vigilant. My job is to make sure that I'm following the small clues, the body language, the responses, the facial response. I will go so far. Absolutely. I will go so far as to sometimes I won't sit them across from each other. Sometimes I have, one sitting on one side and one sitting on the other side to look at me, or maybe in separate rooms, what we call a caucus, just because, there is that factor. I think there also lies on the mediator sort of the responsibility to draw the line of what is and what is not going to happen on my watch, like Iyanla, not on my watch. So I think that's important too. But mediations happen all the time with domestic violence, and they get resolved. Issues get resolved because keep in mind what the definition of resolution is. Resolution does not mean that we're good. It does not mean that, oh, we've come to an agreement, so we're happy now. We like each other now. No. Resolution means we have resolved how we're going to take care of this issue, and now we don't have to have no more conversation about it unless something else comes on.
Wow.
Have you had couples who can't resolve that? And what do you do with them?
So here's the thing. As a mediator, one of my first roles is to make sure to understand that everything is voluntary. Once again, right? Voluntary is the word of the night. So with it being voluntary, there's not an agreement that I can force them to get into. And I have to acknowledge that I will get creative. I will look at different positions. I will propose different situations and resolutions. But at the end of the day, when it's said and done, it's their agreement to either get into or to choose not to get into. Right? So if they say, no, and sometimes people are just not ready. They're not ready to say, this is how I'm going to resolve it. And that's okay. And if that means we need to have another meeting, or if that means that they need to go to the next process, they need to go to court. Some people just have to go to court.
So if a couple says, okay, well, we agreed on whatever the terms may be, they leave maybe about a week or so, young lady comes back and say, wait a minute, I need to rethink this. How do they come back to you to say, we need to do this again? Because I'm not,
Go ahead. Can we finish your question?
Because it doesn't sit right with me with this mediation here. So we need to start this over again.
Okay, hold on before you respond. I want to give the audience a chance to call in. If you have questions for Attorney Knox, give us a call at 352-431-7365. The number is streaming at the bottom. This is we're having a conversation about family mediation. Ms. Knox is a family mediator and attorney, And so she can answer any of your questions in regards to that, because this is something that we need to educate people on. Is about the process of resolving these conflicts in helpful and healthy manners. So go ahead, Ms. Knox.
So once again, I'm going back to my key word, which is voluntary. So if you all have gotten into an agreement, everybody has signed the agreement and so forth. And then let's say the next week someone says, nope, I don't want to do this agreement. Let's go back to mediation. If the other party says, okay, fine, let's go back to mediation and renegotiate it. Okay, voluntarily. But if that person turns around and says, I take back, it depends on what it is. It depends on what they've agreed to. Sometimes it depends on what's going on afterwards. Sometimes there's no take back cease. Now, I don't know if that's the legal term, take back.
We'll use it.
But as the mediator, once again, I always have to make sure it's voluntary and that both levels are fair.
Okay.
Everybody has an equal playing ground. So both parties have to agree. And it's not one party making the other party come. No, both parties have to agree.
Okay.
Now, what was the most challenging case you had that you can recall? And share it with us if you can.
Well, I think I'll be honest with y'all. I think God has a sense of humor. So I think sometimes God is sitting there and I don't know if everybody else is just, doing what they're supposed to do. But I think he sits over and he looks over at Peter and he's like, watch this. And then he sends me.
Yeah, he does. He certainly does.
So, because he's just like, every time I try, and I'm just like, okay. I had a case, this was many years back. And right before, Zoom got really big, I started doing Zoom. And this was in 2019. I started doing Zoom mediations. And I opened up the Zoom mediation and it was a divorce. And they were both of them. Now, keep in mind, a lot of times people are represented by their attorneys. And so either the clients, the parties or the attorneys choose to use me as a mediator. But a lot of times people decide to represent themselves and they still decide to use me as a mediator. Okay. So that's a key gem too, right? You don't have to have an attorney to go to mediation, but they came to me, they were representing themselves. I started off with, hey, welcome both of you all. We're all in the same virtual room. And they were doing so good. And there was a disagreement. And I thought, well, maybe I need to separate them. I said, so should I separate you all? And they said, nope. And the husband said, I'll be right back. And I thought he was going to maybe get a soda or going to get a beer or something. Well, not beer, but, a cigarette or something, because you can't mediation, but going to get something to drink, right? He turned off his screen. He came back on and it was a moon on the screen. And I don't mean it was nighttime.
So what was your response?
So here's the thing. I grew up around chaos. I don't get moved by that. It was a polite, go ahead and shut that video off. And it was important for me that everybody knew where I stood. I was going to separate them and but I need everybody to know that not in my house. Once again, that's not going to ever be acceptable.
Right.
And wife, of course, is in tears because apparently this is something he does and he thought it was funny. It's not. And so I had to go ahead and redirect and lay down the ground rules a little bit more firmly. And then I separated everyone and I went into the room. I said, what were you thinking doing that? Do you, she says she wants to continue to mediate. Do you want to continue to mediate? Yeah. Well, what were you thinking of doing that? He says, I was just trying to lighten the mood.
Oh.
No, he wasn't.
There's other ways.
Okay. See, you give me some. See, I wish I was in there because I could tell you from.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. That's the struggle. Because you want to redirect and correct their behavior.
Right.
Correct.
But that's not the role.
But it's junk behavior. It's what's called junk behavior. Junk
But-
behavior is designed to interrupt and throw you off
Of
the
what
task at
yes,
hand.
yes.
So a person does that. You see it a lot with kids. Okay, that's why kids have tantrums, those things.
Yes.
Because what they're trying to do is get you off track of, you say, Johnny, go clean your room.
Yes.
Listen, you
Yes.
said
Way
a
to
lot
go
with
with junk
attorneys.
behavior is simply ignore it and to continue to redirect.
Absolutely.
I would
Try
have
to
said,
throw you off task.
I would say, okay, John, go ahead and answer, what we gave you. The question that we gave you. How are you going to handle XYZ?
You can say that, but see, here's the thing. As a mediator, you have to remember balance, equal balance.
Yeah.
And so I need to address how wife may be feeling with it, because he may have been like playing, but I got to address how wife may be feeling with that. And then he also needs to know there's consequences to action. You know what I mean? Because the other thing is, people will only do what they're big enough, bold enough, and bad enough to do.
Yeah.
They will only do what you allow them to do and keep on doing it, because you said
absolutely
previously he done it with
the
the
accomplishment of that was he got the wife upset and distracted, and that was his goal. That was the outcome that he was looking for, because he knew once she became emotional in his mind, it made her vulnerable.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And so that's the other thing. So that's why there's the caucus, because now it's separated. And I go into the room, and keep in mind too. So there's some keys with mediation. Everything in mediation is confidential, right?
Yeah.
So you can't share it with anybody else. I can share that situation because it's not like I put a name with it or whatever, but you can't share it with anybody else. Like, this is what we negotiated with. This is what came out, right?
Right.
It's also privileged. So you can't even go to a court and say, Judge, this is what was offered or said or so forth in mediation. So when I go to the other room, when I separate Johnny and Sally, because Johnny wants to show his natural rear end, right? But Sally says, yes, let's keep on going through the process. I'm good. What we talk about in that room, Johnny doesn't know. So that Johnny doesn't know if Sally is saying, this is what he's always done. This is how I feel. Oh my gosh, I need a moment of blah, blah. All he knows is that mediators gone into that room.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. Absolutely. But part of the empowerment, and that case actually resolved. So here's the thing, that case actually resolved. I could have turned around and said, absolutely not, we're not going to go any further. But that case actually resolved. Wife said she wanted to go further, she wanted to continue and so forth. Okay. Wife was empowered to continue because she saw, hey, you don't have to deal with it constantly. You're separated now, what you say is not necessarily going to go, to the other side, as long as you're reasonable, So she was empowered and he was empowered to make some decisions, because I also feel like when people do stuff like that, like you said, they're trying to get it distracted. But why? They're trying to get it distracted because they feel like they're lacking power in some way.
Yeah. Often it is. You're right.
They're lacking power in some way, in some avenue. That is the voice of the unheard. I'm going to go ahead and show my natural behind because I do something so childish.
Yeah. Well, that's almost the opposite of domestic violence. When you're in that situation, that person that is the abuser wants to feel like they have the upper hand.
But that's in the power. That's in the power and control cycle of domestic violence. Because again, all domestic conflict does not necessarily revolve around physical.
Correct.
It can be demeaning the person.
Emotional,
making them feel unsafe, or
financial,
tearing them down.
Financial, yes.
Yeah, financial. So,
financial. I have the money. I make the decisions.
Yeah, I got all the control. And the number one thing is that in mediation, they don't get to just control the whole dynamic, and that's why it's important to have a Lisa Knox out there that can help you to get a balance and get the outcome that's in everybody's, that benefits everyone. So again, we want to thank you, Ms. Knox. Wow, that went by fast.
That went too fast. I was
yes,
learning.
it did. Me too.
That went by fast. But again, I told you, anytime you got a issue you want to put out here for the community or talk about, just reach out to Let's Talk Nation Network. Let us know. We'll get you on. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. You can come on any of the shows that we broadcast, because this kind of information and this level of sharing, honest sharing, is what we're seeking to provide to the community. So they know, hey, if I come on Let's Talk Nation and their guests are there, and we Lisa Knox is the guest tonight, I know I'm going to get the truth, and I'm going to get some tools that I can use to work with. Okay, for those of you who are out there and you may need her services, her number is 813-447-3001, and her website is lmknoxlaw.com. Yes. Again, Ms. Knox, thank you so much. And Quee, thank you for sitting in.
Oh, excellent conversation. Excellent.
Sitting in on the broadcast and everything. And thank you for all the community work that you do.
Thank you.
I know it gets to be a headache. and stuff. And you know,
I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it.
I know. I did some of what you did for years, and God help you.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll take all the prayers, But
you know what? It takes a special person that loves people to do what you guys are doing. It really does. It goes beyond the money.
Yeah, it does.
It goes to, you know, that there's a better way and a right way, and that if people have the opportunity to utilize that, they're going to be better for it. But again, I want to thank both of you for sharing the platform with me tonight. And we will see y'all next week on the sit down. Rod Love should be back next week, and in the mood to take over and take controls. So we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
All right.